What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we're going to be discussing the 3 biggest changes in Destiny 2. Now, each one of these changes has elicited quite the response from the Destiny community, some positive and some negative. But regardless on your position on any of these changes, it is undeniable that in order for Bungie to progress the Destiny series, changes need to be made. And so it's important to discuss all 3 of these massive differentiations when compared to the original Destiny game. And so, let's get started with the 3rd biggest change for Destiny 2, and that is subclass changes. Not only is Destiny 2 adding 3 new subclasses with the Sentinel Titan, Arcstrider Hunter, and the Dawnblade Warlock, but all of the quote-unquote original classes are changing as well. The Gunslinger is a lot different. The Striker Titan now has a roaming super. That is hugely different to play than the original Destiny Striker. And so any of these subclass choices will give you a vastly different gameplay experience when compared to Destiny 1. Heck, every single class now has a unique class ability, with Titans now being able to put down an actual barrier shield. A very useful ability that has completely blocked off zones in PvP, allowing for flag captures, and in PvE, the ability to deploy one next to a downed ally and revive him without taking incoming fire is incredibly useful. Let's not forget about the Warlock's class abilities with Empowering and Healing Rift. I saw so many rifts deployed in the Destiny 2 beta. Both are so useful. One increasing your damage output by a ton for yourself and your allies, and the other healing yourself and your allies. And then lastly, there is the Hunter class abilities with the 2 different dodges. Now, there has been some criticism from the community because the Hunter's class ability doesn't affect teammates like the other 2. However, the fact that you can dodge and instantly reload your gun or melee, depending on which one you select, is also very useful. And I've gotten some pretty disgusting kills and scenarios because I was able to dodge an incoming attack and then, instantly reload my gun, surprising the enemy. And let's also not forget that there's 3 subclasses still missing. The Taken King subclasses with the Solar Titan subclass, the Void Hunter subclass, and the Arc Warlock subclass we know nothing about. However, there is evidence coming from Bungie developers that these subclasses may actually be coming with the release of Destiny 2, but they're just being kept secret for now. Now, moving on from there, the 2nd biggest change in Destiny 2 is the gun system. This is huge, and this is something completely unexpected. I remember being at the world premiere and watching this all unfold and looking at all the weapons, and then when they fully announced that they're completely redoing the gun system, that's something I never expected. I never expected this gun system to actually be in place for Destiny 2, but here it is. Now again, this has been met with a lot of praise. It has completely changed the balancing factor in PvP, and in many people, including my own opinion, made it a lot better, but also a lot of negativity. This has definitely lowered your power potential in PvE, and a lot of players feel weaker. They don't get to use their favorite secondary weapons like shotguns and snipers anywhere near as much as they did in Destiny 1. However, again, this is a bold change regardless of how you feel about it. Instead of having primaries, secondaries, and heavies in Destiny 1, you essentially have primaries again, but elemental with the energy weapon slot, and then lastly the power weapons, which are all the one-hit kill weapons, shotguns, snipers, grenade launchers, rocket launchers, fusion rifles, linear fusion rifles. There is a bunch of different power weapons. And this is one of those changes that you can just feel immediately when playing Destiny 2. Being able to switch from a scout rifle to an SMG and then to a fusion rifle is so much different than switching from an auto rifle to a fusion rifle to a rocket launcher. It's just a whole different dynamic. Also, having access 100% of the time to essentially a primary weapon with elemental damage because of the energy weapon slot is really going to help take down baseline enemies. Enemies with shields are a lot easier to take down because you always have an elemental gun. Also, it was introduced in Destiny 2 that all elemental weaponry, all energy weapons, do bonus damage against shields. And then if you have a matching element, so if you have a solar weapon and you shoot a solar shield, it'll again do the same amount of extra damage as an arc weapon shooting that solar shield, except for if it's a matching elemental type, the shield will explode, damaging nearby enemies, increasing your overall damage output. It also puts pressure on players to find kinetic or energy weapons that can do good damage against bosses or higher tier enemies, like a scout rifle with triple tap, because now you can't just rely on the abundant ammo that you got with your secondary sniper rifle, for example, and take down strike bosses incredibly quickly with black spindle-like weapons. Now, as many people have said is a positive change, it's a little bit harder, in a sense, to complete a normal strike. You're gonna have to pay a little bit more attention, and you won't just be wafting through massive swaths of enemies with your incredibly powerful shotgun. Again, some people view this as a negative, but others do like this somewhat increased reliance on difficulty that has resulted from this change. But again, PvP is hugely impacted by this change. Destiny 1 had a hard time balancing its gun system, and the evidence for that is the fact that, something like shotguns were nerfed 5 or 6 times throughout Destiny's history. That is insane, and that's not counting all the nerfs to fusion rifles, the nerfs to snipers, the rebalancing. It was just constant. Now, putting those one-hit kill weapons in the power ammo category for PvP has really relegated them to just being used only a few times each round. The fact that only one person can pick up ammo, they are much more controlled in Destiny 2, and as a result, you have more primary gun-on-gun action in Destiny 2 than ever in Destiny 1, aside maybe from vanilla Destiny. But moving on from there, the number one change coming to Destiny 2 is the loot system. Now this may sound kind of crazy. I just listed number 3 being subclass changes, number 2 an entirely different gun system, and then number 1 is the loot system changes. Like, am I sure about that? Well, although those past 2 changes are massive, and although I'm not necessarily putting a huge emphasis on the order of this ranking, I do think the biggest change, at least for me, going into Destiny 2 is the fundamental change to the loot system. And there's several things changing with Destiny's loot system. We have potentially even a new rarity called prestigious loot that you get from doing flashpoints, and an activity like flashpoints offering what was quoted as Nightfall tier rewards is an update to the loot system as well. You have more ways to get Nightfall tier rewards rather than just doing the Nightfall. So there's a bunch of stuff already changing in that sense, but the biggest change overall to the loot system is definitely the fact that randomized loot is gone. And this is, I don't think people realize how big of a change this is, like how impactful this will be in Destiny 2, but just think about how much time you have spent in Destiny grinding for god rolls. How many Ice Lunas have you gotten that you've broken down? How many palindromes have you gotten that you've dismantled? How many whatever, insert gun name here, have you gotten that you've deleted looking for that god roll? Well, in Destiny 2, none of that will ever happen. There is no randomized rolls in Destiny 2. Every single loot piece, every single weapon, all armor has dedicated rolls. So if you get a certain hand cannon, that hand cannon will always spawn with the same exact perks every time. Now the benefits of that is a huge increase to balance in Destiny 2. No longer are you just going to have these god rolls running rampant. I mean, look at hand cannons. everyone in Destiny currently is running around with Ias Lunas and Palindrome God Rolls. Everyone. There is no place for a mediocre, devil hand cannon roll. It's just not going to happen. So everyone is just circle jerking for those god rolls. But now in Destiny 2, you can have a much more balanced gun system. You can have weapons that maybe one has better range than another one, but the other one has the better overall perks. It has Luck in the Chamber and Final Round or something like that. Bungie can go in and balance the gun system so much more finely tuned so that you actually have a meta. You actually have a variety of weapons that you can use. Instead of literally 2 hand cannons being clearly top tier, in Destiny 2 we could have 7. Think about how insane that is in terms of PvP diversity. That instead of 2, you can go up to 7 or 8 hand cannons that are totally viable in PvP. And the same basically works for PvE. People don't usually think about this, but PvE definitely had its meta as well. People running around with Fatebringers constantly. The Fatebringer is so clearly the best choice in so many scenarios. It would be nice to have some competition for that gun. Other hand cannons, other scout rifles, other auto rifles that actually, well, the Genesis chain actually finally did challenge it, but for the longest time it stood alone. It would be nice to have more diversity in PvE as well, so that's the positive. The negative is that without the chase for the roll, without spending so much time trying to get those god rolls, are you going to play Destiny 2 for as long? Are you going to get bored quicker because you get the loot and then you're just done? That is the big question, and Bungie's really going to have to be on top of adding so much more loot with every expansion, because again, once you get loot, you've got it for good. You don't need to get the better god roll. But however, this also alleviates a ton of vault space issues, so I guess that's another positive. But this is just undoubtedly going to be a massive, massive change. Everything in the game is essentially like raid loot. It has a designated role. So this is just going to really change how you play the game. It's going to change how you spend your time and how you value different activities in Destiny. Now, if there's a really good hand cannon dropping from the Crucible, since it's dedicated roles, you're going to be playing the Crucible maybe even more. And so guys, that is it for my list of the 3 biggest changes coming to Destiny 2. Now again, there's going to be several different opinions on these changes. Just go to the comment section, you're going to see people saying the new change of the gun system is amazing, and people saying the new change to the gun system is terrible. But that is kind of good in a sense that at least Bungie is progressing the franchise enough. At least Bungie is changing things enough that people have these hugely almost emotional responses to these changes. And again, I'm not diminishing anyone who doesn't like these changes. There are certainly some problems that could result for these changes, but something you can't criticize about Destiny 2 is that it's Destiny 1.5. These are completely game-changing, massive differences between Destiny 2 and Destiny 1, and that is good. One thing you can say for certain is that playing Destiny 2 feels quite different than playing Destiny 1, which I think is probably something deep down that most people did want. It's still a Destiny game, but it's different. It feels fresh, it feels new, and that is good. Hopefully Bungie can make the best of these changes. Hopefully, for example, we won't spend all of our time bored out of our minds because we get all the loot because there's no randomized loot. But aside from stuff like that, things are, in my opinion, looking up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you want to see more Destiny 2 content, be sure to slap that subscribe button. And if you actually want to be notified of new uploads, be sure to press the bell beside subscribe. Now, if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.